Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I want to talk about The Great Gatsby. Let's try that again, but with breath. Today I want to talk about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Oh God. Today I want to talk about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, published in 1925. This is the story of a little society of very rich people living in a fancy Long Island neighborhood. The story revolves around its fanciest, richest, and most mysterious inhabitant, J. Gatsby. But the narrator is one Nick Carraway, who finds himself in J. Gatsby's orbit and drawn to him. And when J. Gatsby asks him for a favor, he does it, even if that means facilitating an extramarital affair between Gatsby and Nick's married cousin, Daisy. This is an absolute staple of 20th century American literature. It's probably the sort of thing you read in school if you grow up in an English-speaking country. I wouldn't know. I didn't read it until just now. Even though I am well familiar with similar stories from British authors. What I'm saying is I read a lot of early 20th century fiction about rich people in Britain. But this is the first time I've read a story about rich people living in America. And it really was a different experience. Because considering the opulence of the setting and the people, the writing itself is quite sparse. The plot is very slow to get going. Overall, I have to say I am slightly disappointed in my expectations of The Great Gatsby. Fitzgerald probably shouldn't have set it up with such a grandiose name. I didn't entirely hate it, and the ending really saved the book for me. I think part of the disappointment was that I didn't feel the charisma that the other characters were feeling when it came to Gatsby. But maybe that's the lesson of the book. Maybe it's that it's not Gatsby's charisma that draws the people around him to him, but simply his wealth. But we are presented with this mystery of a man, someone whose popularity is the result of a carefully crafted persona. But again, it didn't seem that carefully crafted, since pretty much from the very first page, there's all this speculation that Gatsby's actually quite a dodgy person and that he's involved in very dodgy business. And it almost seems part of the charm, but it wasn't quite convincing. Gatsby's the sort of book character that we love to read about. Someone larger than life, someone who's so very different from you, the plain old reader, looking at this story of outrageous living. But the book didn't quite deliver on that promise. And I'm finding it hard to put into words why, which is a bit of a problem when I'm trying to review a book, which kind of involves putting into words why I felt the way I felt about it. I guess the characters seemed a bit flat to me. The most interesting person was probably... I'm going to leave a pause here for you to guess which of the characters you think I found the most interesting person. It's Tom Buchanan, who's Daisy's uptight, conservative, unlikable husband. He felt like the most realist to me. He felt like someone I know. All my friends watching this going like, is she talking about me? He felt like an actual person. He felt like a worthy, not adversary or opponent, because this isn't an epic fantasy novel, but you know, he's like the mirror image to Gatsby. With Tom, you know exactly where you're at with everything he says. He just felt like a real person, whereas most of the other characters did not. I didn't see the appeal of Daisy at all, for example. But then again, maybe the appeal of Daisy is not her personality or her character, but rather what she represents. Because she is very much this old money rich. Perhaps it's exactly that, what attracts Gatsby to her. What she represents rather than who she is. Since his whole persona is not just trying to fit into this world that he finds himself moving in, but to inhabit it truly and to be right at its center. So yeah, my thoughts are not all negative, as I'm sure you've been able to pick up on. The writing is gorgeous. It's very sparse, it's very well crafted. This is a book that I both listened to as an audiobook and read on paper, and I think this works best on paper. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I usually prefer them with classics, but with this one I had to turn off the audiobook and then continue on paper, because it's the sort of book where you want to be able to go back a few pages and reread passages or read the same sentence 2 or 3 times, because it's just so perfectly well written. So considering its minimalist style, this is very powerful, very evocative writing. And it's a book that I think deserves to be read slowly, where a lot of the meaning is hidden between the lines, where you really want to think about what you're reading. It is a character novel, which is why I found it a little bit disappointing, because sure, there is a lot about the characters there. This whole idea of the society of the Eastern United States versus the Western United States. Obviously, a lot of it is about class in this very American interpretation of class. The impact of class and upbringing and money and wealth on all of the characters. It obviously also talks about the theme of infidelity and love and relationships, and how, for example, a concept such as infidelity affects characters differently depending on their social status. It's a story about individualism and community and reinvention. It's a story about how a person has, to some degree, control over who they become and how others see them, but not as much as they'd like. So there is a lot to this book, and yet I find myself finishing it with a sort of detached feeling. Like, I can see objectively why a lot of people really love it, but I just didn't, and I just couldn't, even though I tried. So take that as you will. I wouldn't not recommend The Great Gatsby, and I know many people who have this deep bond to this book, who really love it, who read it over and over again, and who really see a lot more in The Great Gatsby than I did. Maybe that's my own fault for going into it with too high expectations. But in the end, it's a short book and I just don't have that much to say about it. I thought I'd have more to say about it, but I am struggling to find more things. It hasn't completely put me off. F. Scott Fitzgerald. I will probably read another one of his books at some point in the future, but let's just say I'm not running to the bookshop to buy his back catalogue. However, it definitely has made me curious about reading more early 20th century American fiction and getting more into that side of 20th century literature. So there you have it, a very short review for a very short book, and I'm a little bit disappointed in myself that I don't have more to say about it, but there you go. Sometimes a book just leaves you with this feeling of, that's it, and this one certainly did. Thank you for watching. Bye!